Listen to that sound. Acorns falling. October. Every suburb in America. Hundreds per tree. Thousands per neighborhood. The sound of biological clocks ticking, of calories dropping, of food literally raining from the sky and hitting pavement where it will rot, be raked up, thrown away. Each fall, homeowners across North America spend an average of $500 on landscaping services to remove acorns from their properties, raking them, bagging them, hauling them to landfills as if they were garbage. Those same homeowners are throwing away approximately $2,000 worth of food per mature oak tree. Food that requires no planting, no cultivation, no irrigation, no fertilizer, no pesticides. Food that has sustained human civilizations for longer than agriculture has existed. This is the suburban mirage. The illusion that a lawn covered in acorns is a problem to be solved rather than a blessing to be harvested. The conditioning that makes us see food as garbage and pay money to dispose of wealth. And it wasn't always this way. For 10,000 years, oak trees weren't ornamental decorations. They were orchards. Infrastructure, the foundation of food security for cultures spanning every continent where oaks grow. This is the story of the stolen bread, the systematic erasure of acorn-based food culture, the replacement of a system that fed millions for millennia with one that requires dependency, extraction, and control. To understand what was stolen, we need to go back before agriculture existed, before wheat was domesticated, before humans planted a single seed. In the aftermath of the last ice age, as glaciers retreated and forests reclaimed the land, oak trees became dominant across vast regions of North America, Europe, and Asia. These weren't random woodlands. They were, effectively, wild orchards producing massive annual harvests of nutrient-dense food. Human cultures noticed. Of course they noticed. A single mature oak produces between 200 and 2,000 pounds of acorns in a good mast year, enough to sustain a family for months. Unlike seasonal vegetables that required planting and tending, unlike wild game that required hunting and could be depleted, acorns arrive predictably every autumn in staggering quantities. Stored well and provided complete nutrition, carbohydrates, fats, protein, minerals. In California, Native American tribes, particularly the Ohlone, Miwok, Pomo, and Maidu, developed what anthropologists now recognize as sophisticated silviculture, the management of oak forests as food-producing orchards without ever planting a single tree. This wasn't casual gathering. This was agriculture without plows, forestry without logging, food production at a scale that sustained populations estimated at 300,000 people in California alone before European contact. The Ohlone managed oak density through controlled burning. Every few years, they would set intentional fires during the wet season, low-intensity burns that cleared underbrush, eliminated competing vegetation, and released nutrients into soil. These fires prevented catastrophic wildfires by reducing fuel loads, promoted oak regeneration by eliminating competitors, and increased acorn production by reducing stress on mature trees. The result was park-like oak savannas with optimal tree spacing for maximum yield. They understood what modern ecology has only recently confirmed. Fire is not destruction. Fire is tool. Used correctly, it increases productivity of oak ecosystems by 200 to 300%. The Miwok took it further. They practiced selective harvesting, taking acorns from high-producing trees, leaving low producers unharvested. Over generations, this created genetic selection pressure favoring trees that produced larger, sweeter, more abundant acorns. This is horticulture. This is agriculture. Not in the way Europeans understood those terms, but in outcome, deliberate human management to increase food production through environmental manipulation and genetic selection. And it worked for 10,000 years. 10,000 years of stable food production, sustainable harvest, human populations fed reliably from a system that required no annual planting, no soil depletion, no irrigation infrastructure. At the center of village life was the acorn granary, elevated structures woven from willow or tule, designed to store tens of thousands of pounds of acorns in the shell, protected from moisture and pests. These granaries represented food security. A bad acorn year could be buffered by stores from previous good years. Families, villages, entire regions maintained multi-year reserves, famine prevention through storage infrastructure that modern industrial agriculture has largely abandoned in favor of just-in-time delivery. When Spanish missionaries arrived in California in the 1770s, they documented villages with granaries holding estimated 50,000 to 100,000 pounds of acorns. They documented harvest festivals, processing techniques, culinary sophistication, and then they systematically dismantled it. The erasure of acorn food culture wasn't accidental. It was strategic, and it began with a simple chemical compound that the industrial food system weaponized as justification for abandonment: tannins, the defense mechanism that oak trees evolved to protect their seeds from being eaten by insects and animals before they could germinate and establish the next generation. When you bite into a raw acorn, the tannins bind to proteins in your saliva and mouth tissue, creating an intensely bitter, astringent sensation that makes the acorn unpalatable. This isn't toxicity, it's deterrence. The tannins aren't poisonous, they're just unpleasant. But here's the critical part: tannins are water-soluble. They dissolve in water. And every culture that utilized acorns as food knew this. The bitterness isn't a barrier, it's a processing step. Native Californian processing techniques were elegantly simple. Acorns were shelled, ground into flour using stone mortars, and then leached, flushed repeatedly with water until tannins dissolved and washed away, leaving behind sweet, edible flour. The most common method involved digging a shallow depression in sand near a stream, lining it with leaves or cloth, spreading the acorn flour in the depression, and pouring water over it repeatedly for hours, sometimes days, until the flour tasted sweet. The leaching water would turn dark brown with dissolved tannins, visibly carrying away the bitterness. When the water ran clear and the flour tasted sweet rather than bitter, the process was complete. Cold water leaching preserved nutrients and flavor. The process removed only the tannins, leaving behind carbohydrates, fats, proteins, and minerals intact. The resulting flour could be used immediately or dried for long-term storage. Hot water leaching, boiling acorns in successive changes of water, was faster but cooked the flour and gave it a different flavor profile. Both methods worked. Both were used. Both represented sophisticated understanding of chemistry without laboratories. But when European colonizers encountered acorn-based food systems, they saw something different. They saw primitive, people-eating famine food. They saw labor-intensive processing and concluded it was inefficient compared to wheat, which could be ground and baked with no processing beyond milling. They didn't understand that the processing was the point, that it was a technology refined over millennia, that it worked, that it sustained populations larger than the European settlements that replaced them. The tannins became the excuse. Acorns are bitter and inedible. The narrative went, "We have brought you wheat, which is civilized and superior." What they were really saying was, "We cannot control a food system based on wild trees that anyone can harvest. We can control wheat, which requires cleared land, plows, seed purchases, mills, and central distribution." The tannins weren't the problem. Autonomy was the problem, and tannins provided a chemical justification for eliminating that autonomy. Let's talk about what happened next, because the destruction of oak food culture wasn't just about convincing people acorns were inedible. It was about building an infrastructure that made acorns economically obsolete. In the early 1800s, grain milling was still a local activity. Villages had small water-powered mills where farmers brought wheat or corn to be ground into flour. But industrialization changed everything. Steam-powered roller mills could process grain at scales village mills couldn't match. They could refine flour to unprecedented whiteness. For this system to work, grain agriculture needed to expand dramatically, which meant forests needed to be cleared, which meant oak trees needed to be removed. This was the great nutritional theft, the replacement of perennial, zero-input food systems with annual, high-input systems that required purchasing seed. The economics were deliberately structured to create dependency. Farmers who cut down their oak trees to plant wheat had to purchase seed annually. Meanwhile, the oak trees they'd cut down had provided food for free, indefinitely, with no inputs, no purchases, no dependency on anyone. But the central mills needed the grain, needed the volume, needed the control, so oak food culture had to die. By the late 1800s, agricultural extension services, actively discouraged acorn use, promoted grain agriculture, and taught that oak trees were wasting agricultural land. In California, estimates suggest that 90% of oak woodland was cleared between 1850 and 1950, primarily to make room for wheat, barley, and other grain crops. With the trees gone, the knowledge went with them. Native American populations, devastated by disease and displacement, could no longer pass down acorn processing techniques. By 1950, acorn food culture in North America was effectively extinct outside of a few isolated native communities maintaining traditions despite active discouragement. And the oak trees that remained were reclassified, no longer food producers, but ornamental landscape trees that dropped messy acorns requiring disposal. The theft was complete. A 10,000-year-old food system erased in a century, replaced with dependency on industrial grain production. But the knowledge didn't completely vanish. And the chemistry doesn't change just because culture forgets it. Tannins remain water-soluble. Acorns remain nutritious. The process remains accessible to anyone willing to learn. Let me walk you through the cold leaching secret, the ancestral science that transforms bitter acorns into sweet, nutritious flour. Step 1. Collection. Gather acorns in autumn when they fall naturally. Avoid any with holes. Those contain insect larvae. Avoid any that float in water. Those are rotten inside. Healthy acorns sink. Different oak species produce different flavors. White oak acorns, rounded leaf lobes, sweet after minimal processing, contain fewer tannins than red oak acorns, pointed leaf lobes, more bitter, requiring longer leaching. Both are edible once processed. Step 2. Shelling. Acorns can be cracked individually with a nutcracker, or the shells can be loosened by roasting briefly. 10 minutes at 350 degrees Fahrenheit makes shells brittle and easier to remove. Inside is the kernel, pale tan, sometimes with a papery inner skin that can be rubbed off. This kernel is your raw material. Step 3. Grinding. Traditional methods used stone mortars, grinding acorn kernels into progressively finer flour through repeated pounding. Modern methods can use a food processor or high-powered blender. The finer the grind, the faster tannins leach out, but rougher meal works too. It just takes longer. Aim for consistency similar to cornmeal or finer. Step 4. Cold water leaching. This is where chemistry becomes cuisine. Place the acorn flour in a bowl and cover with cold water, about twice the volume of flour. Stir occasionally. The water will turn dark brown as tannins dissolve and leach out. After a few hours, pour off the dark water through a fine mesh strainer or cloth, being careful not to lose flour. Add fresh water. Repeat. The number of water changes needed varies by oak species and flour fineness, but typically ranges from 5 to 10 changes over 1 to 3 days. You'll know you're done when the flour tastes sweet instead of bitter. Literally taste it. This is the cold leaching secret: patience and water. That's all. No special equipment. No chemicals. Just time and water systematically removing what makes acorns inedible while leaving everything else intact. Step 5. Drying. The leached flour is wet and will spoil if not dried. Spread it thinly on baking sheets and dry in a low oven, 150 to 200 degrees Fahrenheit, or food dehydrator until completely dry and slightly crumbly. Once dried, acorn flour can be stored in airtight containers for months. Some sources claim years if kept cool and dry. You've just created food storage from wild trees using only water and heat. Step 6. Using it. Acorn flour has a nutty, slightly sweet flavor and can be used like any flour, though it contains no gluten and won't rise like wheat. Mix it with wheat flour for baked goods that need to rise, or use it pure for pancakes, flatbreads, porridge, or as a thickener for soups and stews. Traditional Native American preparations include acorn mush, flour boiled with water into porridge, and acorn cakes, flour mixed with water and formed into patties, then baked or fried. The flavor is mild enough to take on whatever you season it with, savory or sweet. It's complete food, requiring only creativity and application. Now let's talk about why this matters beyond culinary curiosity, because acorn flour represents something the industrial food system cannot commodify and therefore cannot control: true nutritional sovereignty. The modern food system is optimized for efficiency, not resilience. Just-in-time delivery. Minimal storage. Maximum centralization. This creates extraordinary vulnerability to disruption. We've seen this during COVID-19, during extreme weather events. Supermarket shelves empty within days when supply chains are disrupted, because we've abandoned local food production and storage in favor of global commodity markets. Acorn-based food security is the opposite architecture. It's decentralized. Every oak tree is an independent food source. It's resilient. Oak trees produce for centuries, survive droughts that kill annual crops, require no inputs that can be disrupted. And most importantly, it's uncontrollable. No corporation can patent oak trees. No one can prevent you from gathering acorns from public lands or your own property. No supply chain can be cut off. No price can be manipulated. One mature oak tree producing 500 pounds of acorns provides approximately 1,500 pounds of processed flour, roughly 2.4 million calories. That's enough to sustain a single person for over 3 years on calories alone, or feed a family for months. From one tree that you didn't plant, didn't irrigate, didn't fertilize, didn't purchase inputs for. This is survival insurance that requires no premium payments, no policy renewals, no company remaining solvent. It requires only oak trees and knowledge. As climate instability increases, as economic systems show strain, as centralized food systems reveal their fragility, the value of decentralized, permanent food sources becomes impossible to ignore. Acorns are climate adaptation. They're economic insurance. They're the ultimate survival food hiding in plain sight, disguised as landscaping nuisance. There's a profound irony in watching suburban homeowners rake up acorns while purchasing flour made from wheat grown 1,000 miles away, processed in industrial mills, packaged in plastic, shipped through vulnerable supply chains. They're literally throwing away local, permanent, nutritionally superior food to purchase inferior substitutes from a system designed to extract maximum profit from their dependency. The rebirth begins with a simple decision: stop raking and start reaping. This autumn, when acorns fall and homeowners across your neighborhood begin the ritual disposal, do something different. Gather a bucket, collect what they're discarding, learn what they've forgotten, process them. The cold leaching method described isn't difficult. It's just unfamiliar. It requires patience, but patience is free. Water is cheap. Knowledge is relearnable. Make acorn flour. Use it. Feed yourself or your family something that grew freely, required no industrial intervention, created no dependency, and connected you to a food tradition older than agriculture itself. And then, this is critical, share the knowledge. The erasure of acorn food culture succeeded because knowledge transmission was interrupted. The rebirth requires reversing that interruption. Teach your children to identify oak trees, to recognize edible acorns, to process them. Teach your neighbors. Post about it. Demonstrate that the messy acorns littering their driveways are food they're paying to throw away. Every person who learns to process acorns is a person who can never again be completely dependent on industrial food systems. Every household that maintains acorn flour is a household with survival insurance that doesn't expire. This is how food cultures rebuild, not through top-down programs or government initiatives, but through individuals choosing to remember, to practice, to teach. The oak trees are still here, still producing, still offering. The same trees that fed your ancestors for 10,000 years are dropping the same food, waiting for recognition that never comes. Until now, until the choice to see differently, to value differently, to act differently. The great nutritional theft can be reversed, not through legislation or institutional change, but through individual reclamation of knowledge and practice. The industrial mills needed oak trees to die so wheat dependency could be established. But they couldn't kill all the trees, couldn't erase all the knowledge, couldn't completely sever the connection between humans and oaks that extends back to before we were fully human. That connection persists in the acorns falling right now. In October, in November, in every suburb, in every park, in every forest where oak trees still stand. The stolen bread can be reclaimed. The knowledge can be restored. The sovereignty can be practiced. All it requires is bending down, picking up what others discard, and remembering that food doesn't require purchase when it falls from the sky. Listen, the biological clock is ticking. The acorns are falling. The offer is made. The only question is, will you rake or will you reap?